Hey everyone, I'm William Strife, and welcome to the Heads Up Podcast, Episode 9 for September 15th, 2012. So let's get right to it. First off, I haven't put up a video in a few weeks now. The reason for that is I've been quite busy for the last couple of weeks. I have a lot of juggling pins in the air right now, as it were. A couple of them will land fairly soon. No later than the 26th will I have another video out, but at the same time, I'm hopeful that things will come together much sooner than that. No guarantee. So, with that out of the way, I'll cover the questions that got the most upvotes in the last podcast that I did. And in addition, I will cover a few current events after that. And also, don't forget to ask questions of your own. If you see someone else ask a question that you want answered, be certain to upvote their question because it increases visibility for the question, and the more upvotes one question gets, the more likely I am to answer it. So, without further ado, I will get right on to the questions. And the first one that I'm going to cover, the delay of Dawnguard coming to the PS3 and the potential and how it can potentially not come to the PS3. To be more specific, it was the user Timajaru, I think that's Timajaru. He said, "I'm a sad PS3 owner who's still waiting for Dawnguard," and that got a couple of upvotes, but at the same time I ended up responding to that specific comment, and I said, "I can explain why that's the case. I know a lot of details about it. If anyone wants a full explanation in the next podcast, reply to or upvote this comment." And wow, did the comment ever get upvoted to an incredible degree. So, to answer the question, actually, I guess I should lay out what the question is more or less in a much better light first. It basically comes down to this. The first expansion content, Dawnguard, for the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, was released for the Xbox 360 several months ago, and there was an exclusivity contract between Bethesda and Microsoft to keep the DLC completely exclusive to the Xbox 360 for 1 month. Well, just a little over 1 month later, the DLC was made available on Steam for the PC version of Skyrim. And while that's all good and well, nothing at all has come along for the PS3 version of Skyrim. And a lot of people are wondering why it's taking so long. Well, just not long before these questions were asked, not long before the last podcast went up, which was around 2 weeks or so ago now, over on the official Bethesda forums, it was made evident through a administrator post that there are some significant, and I mean very significant, problems with getting Dawnguard to work on the PlayStation 3. And it's evident that a lot of people either don't know that Bethesda outright said they don't know if it's possible to get Dawnguard working on the PS3. And furthermore, even if people don't know that, there are still a lot of people wondering why it's taking so long. So, to answer these questions, first I want to say that I am no significant expert on the subject. It's not like I can give a very precise explanation of why this is happening, but based on what I understand about Bethesda as a developer and what I understand about the PlayStation 3 and its hardware architecture, I can give you what's probably the most plausible explanation for the problems that Bethesda is facing whenever it comes to getting additional content patched into it. And moreover, the reason why patches fixing the problems are so slow to roll out for the game on the PS3 as it is. It all comes down to basically one simple reason: the processors in the PlayStation 3. Now, a lot of people might want to debate me on this, but it's really simple to say that the multi-core processor, to be more specific, the cell core processor, as some people like to call it, in the PlayStation 3, is a very unique piece of technology. It is extremely difficult to program for, and while there are many developers out there who know their way around the cell core processor, they understand what they need to do to get things working on it, Bethesda is not one of those developers. Let me break this down to you a little bit better. The Cell Core processor in the PlayStation 3 has a total of, I think, 8 cores in it. Now, if you turn around and you look at the Xbox 360, it only has 3 cores in it, and moreover, it has a significantly different architecture for its processor. So what it all really comes down to is the fact that the architecture of the Cell Core in the PlayStation 3 is very, very odd. It has a master processor with several slave processors to it. And the basic idea is that you send out the information to each individual core in the processor to get things done faster. The problem is that whenever you have multiple processes running at the same time, it's very, very difficult to get everything to coordinate properly. Because whenever you're in a game, whenever you're in any game, especially a game like Skyrim, you stand in a very large world, and there's 1.5 million things happening, despite the fact that you're just standing still. And getting all of that information to process in unison and in time with each other between all of the processors is very difficult. Now, that's not an insurmountable thing to take care of. That's something that developers have to deal with on every single console that you can develop for nowadays, including the computer. So that's not the problem so much as it is the fact that because the PlayStation 3 has a different type of architecture for its processor, it's not possible to create a game on the Xbox 360 or the PC and just easily and quickly port it over to the PS3 without any hiccups. That's really what it all comes down to. And as unfortunate as it is, Skyrim is a game that is so unbelievably large, it's so unbelievably big, that there are an incredible number of bugs that pop up on the systems that it was meant to be played on. It was designed to be played on the 360, so that's the issue. It's the fact that the game was not designed for the PlayStation 3, and because Skyrim is such a large game with increased complexity based on the fact that, it's a go anywhere, do anything, all of that code has to be able to function regardless of what you do. It's a non-linear experience. It has to respond to what you do. That complicates the way that the code works, and that complicates the process of getting the program functioning on the PlayStation 3 Cell Core processor. Now, I might as well bring this up because some of you might come back and say, well, what about something like Grand Theft Auto 4 or Red Dead Redemption? Those games are really, really big and they're really, really complex, and they're working very well on the PlayStation 3, and there's a very specific reason for that. Over the years, developers have learned a very important lesson. Because it's of greater benefit to publish one game on more than one system to sell more units, developers have learned that developing for the more complex system is much easier, and then scaling it back or simplifying it to work on a much more rudimentary system is what works best. It's the most efficient, it's the fastest, it's the most cost productive. So that means that games like Red Dead Redemption or Grand Theft Auto 4 or any other game that you see on the PlayStation 3 and works well, and then it also works on the 360 but not as well. What's going on there is, specifically in the case of Rockstar Games, say, is that they develop the game on the PS3 first, and that's where they get it running. And then after they have the game running nice and smooth on the PS3, they start porting it over to the Xbox 360 or the PC, because they can scale the programming back and they can get it to work, and they can get it to run much smoother on the architecture that's found in the CPU on the Xbox 360 and the CPUs that you find in desktop computers. So that's the story on that. The reason why Bethesda is probably having all of these troubles is because Skyrim is an unbelievably large game that's incredibly complex because it has several different systems running in tandem to make the entire world possible. And because it's that large open world that has to properly react to what you do, that complicates the process of getting the game to run smoothly. And as unfortunate as it is, it's quite clear that Bethesda created the game to run on the Xbox 360 and the PC, and not on the PS3 first. if Bethesda had gone through the trouble of getting it to work on the PS3 first, it would have ported over to the 360 much better, but there's no guarantee of that. Obviously, I can't vouch for anything because I don't know how to reprogram a game as complicated as Skyrim. That being said, if there's anything holding them up, it's the most feasible reason. But there's another problem that could potentially be holding them back as well, and it's the fact that the Xbox 360 comes loaded with 512, I think it is, 512 megs of RAM, and your average desktop computer or laptop today comes preloaded with 1 gigabyte of RAM. Now, that's to start off with a lot less RAM to work with, but it's still manageable. The PlayStation 3, on the other hand, I have no earthly idea why they chose to do this, doesn't come with 512 megs of RAM. It comes with 256 megs of RAM, which is half what the Xbox 360 has. The only difference is that the RAM found in the PlayStation 3 is server RAM, which is capable of being overclocked to an incredible degree, but it doesn't change the fact that it's still less RAM, even though it can function faster. And RAM has a whole... RAM plays a very, very large role in how smoothly the game is capable of processing information after you play the game for a long time. To be more specific, in the case of Skyrim, the game has all of that. It keeps track of all of this information about how you've affected the world. For instance, if you walk into Whiterun and you just open your inventory and drop an object, and then you turn around and you fast travel out into the middle of the wilderness and then drop half of your items on the ground, the game keeps track of that. And that puts a burden on the RAM in order for it to keep track of it. So naturally, the game is keeping track of all of these ways that you've changed the world. And every single time that you make a change, that puts more data into the RAM, the random access memory. So it can continue to augment and modify the world so that people still react to you after you've finished a certain quest, or people, actually keep saying the right thing about, oh, well, you wear steel plate, etc., etc. And with such a limited amount of RAM in the PlayStation 3, I can see how that would cause a lot of the problems that were popping up earlier during the game, not long after the game's release, where people would play for several hours and then all of a sudden the game would start to lag. It was probably RAM limitations and the fact that the PlayStation 3, simply put, has very unorthodox hardware inside of it. Granted, that hardware is very capable of creating unbelievable games with breathtaking views. Go ahead and look at the Uncharted series, for instance, or Metal Gear Solid 4. They achieve a level of visual fidelity that you just can't really find anywhere else in the console market. Things like Final Fantasy 13 also make an example of it. Whether or not the games that I mention you think are good are another story. The fact of the matter is that these games are capable of extremely high quality graphics that you can't achieve on another console. And it's because even though the hardware in the PlayStation 3 is unorthodox, it's still more powerful whenever you cater to its odd manner, to its odd design. But getting back to the point, that's the whole deal with Dawnguard not coming out on the PS3 yet, and potentially not coming out at all, whether or not they can actually fix the problems that they are facing. There's pretty much no doubt in my mind that it has everything to do with the uncommon hardware in the PlayStation 3, and it's mismatched with how they've, gone through the trouble of coding the game for the 360 and the PC. Hopefully, the people over at Bethesda will be able to work around those problems and get everything sorted out, so all of you PlayStation 3 users will be able to experience Dawnguard. But it's anyone's guess at this point whether or not they actually will be able to. And I think it's fairly grim, the fact that they were willing to come out and make the statement, we don't know if we're going to be able to work around these problems. So, that's your answer for why, and the potential outcome, if it's bad, that's going to be really unfortunate. All right, moving right along, let's get on to the next question. Geez, this one kind of bugs me. There was a comment from Norway 1814 who said, "What's up with Fallout 4?" And this is a question that I didn't really want to answer because I don't see a lot of point to it, but it got a lot of upvotes. And then someone else, Toby Lee 14 said, "Hey William, heard some new stuff about Fallout 4, like they announced it and gave some info. It would be nice if you would fill us in on it." This is the bottom line, everyone. As of today, the 15th of September, nothing. There is no official information out about Fallout 4. There is only speculation at this point. There is nothing official, nothing that you can actually bite into, nothing concrete. So anything that you hear at this point in time, it's completely conjecture. There is no authentic, hard information, facts confirmed. There's not even something that you can speculate from based on the actions that Bethesda has been taking. Now, granted, I will offer up a little bit of information that is, possible to be true, that seems feasible. Personally, as far as Fallout 4 goes, I would love to see the game take place in Chicago, mainly because, if I'm not mistaken, there's still some sort of an enclave presence in that area of the US of A. I don't know if I'm remembering that right. But anyway, that's just my personal wish. As far as, any sort of feasible rumor goes, anything that's floating around on the internet, there's only one tiny bit of information that might be reliable, and even then it's only iffy. And that little bit of information was something that popped up on Reddit a while back, where someone said that the Bethesda team has been spotted out in Boston scouting locations, and that's something that game developers today do on a fairly regular basis, especially whenever a game takes place in some sort of version of the real world that we know. In the case of Fallout 3, Bethesda would have been able to completely fly under the radar whenever doing location scouting and whatnot during the development of the game, because Bethesda Softworks, despite their name, they are located in Rockville, Maryland, which is not that far away from Washington, D.C., so it wouldn't be that difficult for them to go in and look around and nobody to pay heed to them. However, Boston is much further away, and also Bethesda and its employees are much more on the map now since the success of Fallout 3 and the success of Skyrim, and a lot of people are keeping their ear to the ground much better. But like I said, there's no confirmed information that they've actually been scouting Boston. If it is true, it is by all means very feasible to think that they're going to put the next Fallout in Boston. But like I said, there's nothing that can prove that to be true. Now, let's just assume that this little factoid that popped up on the internet is true, and they have been scouting Boston for a location to put the next Fallout game. Well, if it is true, then there's a whole lot that you can draw from that. For instance, one of the most important things is that general area is where the Commonwealth in Fallout 3 is located. Now, some of you may not remember this, but in Fallout 3 there was a man named Zimmer, Dr. Zimmer, located on the boat of Rivet City, and he was searching for an android that had escaped. And whenever you talk to him, he talks about the Commonwealth up north and how they have incredibly advanced technology. And in addition, after you complete Fallout 3, the main quest, as long as you have Broken Steel installed, you can continue to talk to people later and afterwards, and you can actually ask what happened to Dr. Lee, who was responsible for getting the purifier running and, helping it to get up and running again. And it turns out that she left. She went up north to the Commonwealth. There's a lot of speculation as to what would be up there in the Commonwealth, but one thing is for certain. The shadowy organization called the Institute is located in the Commonwealth, which nobody really knows what the Institute is. But let's take a thought here. The Commonwealth in the general area of Boston are located in the real world. So let's give a thought. What's nearby there? The Massachusetts Institute of Technology is there. So if MIT is located in the area known as the Commonwealth in the Fallout series, how much of a stretch might it be to think that the Institute might actually be the remnants of MIT hundreds of years later? And it would make sense. I mean, MIT is one of the foremost technological schools in the United States of America. So you don't really have to stretch your imagination that much to think that in a science fiction world, where else would real life, living, sentient AI androids come from? MIT seems a reasonable place. And obviously there's the railroad that combats the Commonwealth and the Institute, who are trying to keep androids enslaved, as it were. That seems like a nice idea or a prospect for a main story. I don't think it would be the main story, but at the same time, if the rumor turns out to be true and Bethesda has been scouting locations in Boston, then I think it's extremely plausible that the Institute will be part of the next Fallout game. And in addition, that the Institute is, almost no doubt in my mind, the remnants of MIT several hundred years later. But, like I said, I want to reiterate, there's nothing solid about Fallout 4. There's only speculation, there's only rumor. You know, whatever you see out there, you shouldn't rely on it until you actually see it from the horse's mouth. You know, until Bethesda actually says something and it's linked back to that Bethesda has made this official statement, you can't believe anything. That's the fact of the matter. So go ahead, discuss rumors and what have you. Just don't believe everything that you see. And just because you want it to be true doesn't mean that it is. All right, moving on to the next question. And still on the subject of Fallout. This one, I just don't understand why it was asked. Card 15 asked, are you going to do a Fallout New Vegas DLC weapon guide? I covered this in the last video, the fact that I finally got back to going over the guns and the lists and trying to figure out how to structure the guide. But here's the short of the answer. I want to. I would like to. I don't know if I'm going to have the time, though. Like I've said before, Skyrim is where I want to devote most of my time to because you know, it's been almost an entire year since the game came out. I've barely got anything out for it. I feel guilty about not having that done. Obviously, there were extraneous circumstances for why that hasn't happened. But at the exact same time, I want to go back and do the videos for Fallout New Vegas DLC weapons. I don't know if I will, because I don't know if I will be able to find the time. Obviously, it's what everybody wants. I've gotten sufficient feedback to understand that, you know, it's really something that you guys enjoy. So for all intents and purposes, I want to, and I am going to make my best effort to make it happen. But I just don't know that I will be able to get that type of work done in combination with everything else that I have going. So I am making no promises, but I am very hopeful that I will be able to meet your expectations to have some sort of Fallout New Vegas DLC weapon guides out. That's all on that subject. Please do not ask me again. Okay, moving on. This is going to be the last question that I'm going to answer this time around. It's from Adobe 52. It's borderline a demand, I think. Adobe 52 asks, when are we going to see the man with the voice? I really don't see why this matters so much. I mean, do you really need to see my face? Does that really make a difference? If you actually saw me, would it change something? Would you enjoy my videos more? Would you enjoy them less? I don't see a real good point to showing who I am to you, because, I mean, it's just, it doesn't really contribute to my videos. It doesn't contribute to my work. It doesn't change much of anything. Granted, you know, you can argue back, well, if it doesn't change anything, why aren't you showing your face? And my response to that is, I just don't want to, really. It's not that I really have a particular problem with showing my face to anyone. I just don't really care to be on camera or take pictures. It's not that I've gotten negative feedback about how I look. I just don't care to be on camera. I mean, everything that I've done so far, I've done it without, you know, being able to see my face. Yeah, I've got the tiny little avatar on my channel. Every single profile picture I've used has actually been me, albeit with some nice lighting to change the presentation style of it. But, you know, I just don't see how showing my face is going to change anything. And I'm very interested to find out what many of you will have to say about this. The fact that I just don't really want to show my face, and whether or not, a whole lot of you will really want me to show my face, and, how many of you will say, hey, it doesn't matter, I don't care. So go ahead, drop down to the comments, offer up your opinion on me showing my face or not, whether you think I should or not, as it were. Yeah, go ahead. So let me get some sort of a feel for what you guys think about the fact that there are people who want me to show my face and I don't really want to, and tell me whether or not you think that I should or not. Okay, that's it for the comments this week, so I guess it's about time I move on to news. There are only two real sticking points that I want to bother with this week, and the first and foremost one that I think is really the most important is the fact that the Wii U has been announced in its full form. They've, announced the pricing, they've announced the release date, they have their game lineup public, they've been talking about the software available for it. I don't know how most of you feel about the Wii U, especially after what Nintendo did with the Wii, not really paying a whole lot of attention to the core base, catering to casual gamers, as it were. They lost a lot of points with me for it, but at the exact same time, I feel that I got my $250 worth out of the Wii that I purchased on release day. And at the exact same time, I like Nintendo as a company. The games that they release, I always have a whole lot of fun with. Maybe it's just because I've got a lot of built-up nostalgia around Nintendo characters because I spent so much time with them as a kid. But getting back to the facts about the Wii U, it's been announced that there are going to be two different packages for the system. There's going to be the standard package and the premium package. Now, the standard package is going to be $300. It will be just the system, the controller, a power adapter for the system, an HDMI cable for the system, a sensor bar so you can still use the Wiimote from the original Wii with the system, and it will have a 8 GB capacity for data storage. Now, there's a whole lot that you can take away from that. Most importantly, I think, is the 8 GB capacity for data storage. It's the fact that speaks to the fact that Nintendo is still doing everything that they can to keep the Wii from becoming this big media center sitting in the middle of your house, because that's not what they want it to be. In fact, Nintendo has made it quite clear that what they're trying to do with the Wii U, the fact that it's basically a tablet with a controller jammed onto each side of it, it's got that big, nice touchscreen in the middle. I think that it speaks to the fact that Nintendo is really behind what they said. They're trying to satisfy a special market of people who really like, the touch phone, iPhone games, Android and everything. But at the same time, you can't get that extreme high quality, really nice to play experience on the phone, because there's a limit to how much power a handheld cell phone or an iPod Touch or an iPad can actually process. So it looks to me like what they're trying to do is stick to what they said and compete with the mobile game market by allowing you to play HD games in the palm of your hand, more or less, anywhere in your house. And, you don't have to be stuck to the TV. There are a lot of people who, just like to mess around with their phone all day long. But I digress. I'm getting away from the point. The premium package will come with everything that the standard package does. The system, the controller, power cable, sensor bar, HDMI cable. But it will also include Nintendo Land packaged in with it, a charging cradle for the controller, and the system will have 32 gigabytes of storage capacity, which actually that's the bundle that I have chosen to reserve as a avid gamer, and as someone who used to be a Nintendo fanboy. I'm approaching this with skeptical eyes, but at the exact same time, it's Nintendo. I'm putting money down on the system before I actually have it in my hands, because I trust that they're going to do something worthwhile with it. But anyways, the premium bundle is what I've chosen to reserve. I already have my reserve in. I'm going to be making regular stops out to my local GameStop in order to pay off the sizable price tag before it drops November 18th of this year, so it'll be out before Christmas, and they've got a nice lineup of games for it. But I'll be getting mine on the day that it comes out. Actually, it just so happens to fall right in the middle of my vacation just before Thanksgiving, so I will be anticipating the system. I don't know what games I'm going to buy for it yet. I'm going to, bide my time for that, find out what games are actually going to release on the same day as the system. One that I think I'm going to bother with will be Monster Hunter Tri 3 Ultimate, because I already have Monster Hunter Tri for the Wii, but at the exact same time, I had a really difficult time getting through it with the low quality graphics, the low resolutions. It's not that they were bad per se. It was just that it wasn't fun to look at. And then once I hit a point where I was basically at a wall where I couldn't beat a monster, I said, you know what? I'm just going to put this down. And then 3 months later, I noticed that I hadn't finished it yet, and I picked it up and I realized that I completely lost everything and I would have to go through a new learning curve. So I just decided to ignore the game completely. But anyways, the Wii U, it's been announced, coming out November 18th. 2 different bundles, standard and premium, for $300 and $350 respectively. I'm interested. I've got mine reserved. Go ahead, drop down to the comments. Tell me what you think. I'm certain that many of you are, you have a distaste for Nintendo now. So, if you are one of those people that doesn't really like Nintendo anymore, I'll ask you straight out right now, please don't be extremely mean. Don't be excessively corrosive with your language. You can just say, I don't like Nintendo. I don't like what they're doing. There's no reason to be very, very caustic. All right, now for the only other news item I'm going to bother with. Obsidian, the developer of Fallout New Vegas, has a Kickstarter project going. They want to make a game that they can't find anyone to finance. There are no publishers interested in dropping money down on it. So the project that Obsidian is looking to get running is called Project Eternity, and it is reminiscent of those RPGs from the turn of the century where everything took place from, the isometric 3/4 view, top-down type of perspective. Think Diablo 2, think the original Fallout, think Baldur's Gate, if you've ever seen those games. If you haven't, just do a Google search. You'll get plenty of screenshots and you'll understand what I'm talking about. But Obsidian could not get any publisher to fund the game because it's so detached from what you're used to seeing on the market nowadays. So what they decided to do was jump into Kickstarter. And for any of you who don't know, Kickstarter is where you present a project or a cause or something that you want to work on, and you say, this is how much money we need, contribute money towards this cause, and once we reach our goal, we're going to start working on the project in earnest. Now, obviously, Kickstarter and anything similar to it is, very, very sketchy. You have to be careful about who you go throwing your money at, because it does not necessarily mean that whatever you're throwing your money at is going to happen. There have been situations of people being completely swindled out of their money because the people basically, got the cash and they ran with it. But this is a bit of a different story. Obsidian is an actual company. It has a good track record, and they have some very recognizable faces working there who have done some very incredible work over the years. Now, the Kickstarter project for Project Eternity is looking to meet a goal of $1.1 million to make the game possible. I'm interested as to whether or not this is going to work. I personally do not have the money to throw around to donate to a Kickstarter cause, but at the same time, this is something that I'm going to be watching because I think it's really interesting how there are a lot of people who were responsible for really, really good games out of the late 90s and the early millennium who they're finding themselves between a rock and a hard place nowadays. I think his name was Brian Fargo, one of the big minds behind the original Fallout series. He got his hands on the rights to Wasteland, which was the predecessor to Fallout, and he did a Kickstarter, and he and his group of people now have money, and they're working on Wasteland 2, which is a game that also works from a top-down perspective, and it works more like a strategic RPG rather than your traditional action RPG that you see flooded, that you mostly see on the market nowadays. And obviously those types of games, and especially that camera angle, it's very difficult to pitch because you don't really see it anymore. I'm very interested in the fact that there are people who had a lot to do with the old games that used that camera angle from yesteryear, and nowadays they're using Kickstarter to try and, get that genre, get that play style running again because it's been lost to time. And as far as Project Eternity goes, there's next to no information about it so far, but I hope that it succeeds. I hope that it goes into development because, these people, they really know what they're doing with RPGs, and Obsidian has a good track record. I loved Fallout New Vegas. They have other games that I've enjoyed, but bottom line, they're trying to do something new, something different, even though it's technically not new. It's something old being updated, I guess you could say. I want to see it come to fruition, even if it turns out to be, just total crap because it's not fun to play. I really do want to see whether or not this older style of game can potentially survive in the game market, and if at all possible, change the way things are working in the game market. Because, something has to come along to make changes, and I would really like to see how an older style of game coming back might influence the way that other games are developed in the future. But I think I'm getting a little bit philosophical and I'm being long-winded, so I'll just cut that subject off right there. Obsidian, Kickstarter project, based off of old school RPGs. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully it'll work out. Well, that's everything for this week. Be certain to drop down to the comments, ask me questions, anything that you want my opinion on. Maybe there's something you want me to explain, like with the Dawnguard DLC. Just make sure that whatever you ask, it's game related. And also keep in mind that I haven't gotten a video up because I have a lot of projects in the works right now, a lot of juggling batons in the air, as it were, and a few of them will land fairly soon. But until then, thanks for being patient. Anyways, I'm William Strife, and this has been the Heads Up Podcast for September 15th, 2012. I'll see you later.